actually Steampunk Hawaii on Facebook. So if you just type in Steampunk Hawaii, there's actually 2 pages that come up. The first is just a page, and the second is the group itself. So we're actually not the first people who have been doing steampunk in Hawaii. Individual members of the group have been dressing up, doing cosplay, making jewelry, doing fashion shows since about 2010. And we've also had steampunk crafters, of course, like Friston, Wand Park. I'm not sure if they're at Kawaii Kon this year, but they're definitely still greatly respected in the community for what they do. So, yeah, this is part of my group today in the panel. I'm honored to have a few really, really cool people with me. After I tell you a little bit more about the history of steampunk, we'll be going into some things like steampunk music, what steampunk sounds like. Then we have steampunk author reading Giraffe here to talk about writing in the steampunk genre. Honey Sean will be talking about media and magazines covering steampunk lifestyle and fashion. Brianna Swanson will be sharing her experiences as a seamstress. She makes and models steampunk outfits. And Richard Abbey from Rick's Steampunk, etc. They make their own outfits. They'll be ending our panel with a really cool demonstration of how you can get started tinkering, how you can repurpose your own everyday household objects to make really cool steampunk stuff. So, thanks for coming. Let's get this train rolling. All right, anybody know what steampunk is? Take a shot. Don't make me get you up here. Are you gonna come up here? You can. It's okay, you don't bite. I might tentacle slap you though.
Steampunk is basically like a fantasized version like Victorian era. Like I think you said one time petticoats, with a ring underneath. Like the novels of Jules Verne, we have big influence, like high technology and like a low technology era.
You got it, man. That's pretty spot on. So steampunk has been described as Victorian science fiction. It's been described as something that I can't even read my own slides. Let's go over here. It started as a literature movement, of course, and it incorporates technology and aesthetics from the Victorian era and also from an era that never existed. And it's kind of like an alternate future in the past. So if you imagine what folks in 1887 or 1889 would have thought of when they thought of the future, that's a little bit like what steampunk is now. It's really hard to describe the genre. Throwing a gear on something isn't really enough to make it steampunk. It does have a lot to do with the traditional punk aesthetics, the DIY, the independence, the creativity, exploration of new things, and definitely a new way of looking at the modern world through the past. Also, you know, there's all those metal bits. The doohickeys, the gadgets, the gizmos, the whatchamacallits, the sprockets. What is that around your neck?
The mining equipment. So yeah, it's one of the drill bits.
Drill bits. There you go. I have a couple pictures of guys up here, and the first, of course, is Leonardo da Vinci. He was totally steampunk before it was cool. This guy invented the umbrella hat. He was probably steampunk too, even though he didn't know it. Brings us to what you said. Jules Verne, Victorian era science fiction writers, Mary Shelley, H.G. Wells. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was a huge inspiration for a lot of steampunk bands, steampunk literature. Did you know that Jules Verne invented submarines in his head before they ever existed? He was kind of the iconic steampunk writer. In 1965, there was a TV show called The Wild Wild West. Has anyone ever seen it? Oh, wow. Awesome.
But I don't care. I love her eyes and her wild, wild hair. Dance to the beat that we like best. Heading for the 90s, living in the wild, wild west. The wild, wild west. The wild, wild west. Wild west. Oh, wild west.
There she is!
Whatever it is, it's glowing like it's red hot. Must have hit pretty hard the way it plowed into the ground. Well, Mr. West, you got any answers? No, but I have some questions.
And it was described as James Bond on horseback, which is pretty cool to us. It later inspired the 1999 movie starring Will Smith and Kevin Kline, the one with the giant spider, which is still cited as a classic example of the steampunk aesthetic. And then in 1987, the term steampunk was coined for the first time. Novelist K.W. Jeter, who Radian is going to be talking about later, coined it in a letter to actually describe a period twist on cyberpunk. So steampunk and cyberpunk are closely related to each other. And then in 2005, Abney Park was founded. And a lot of you have probably heard of Abney Park. They're the first band to be readily identified as a steampunk band, and you'll be hearing some of their stuff later. In 2006, the first steampunk convention happened. And it was called SalonCon. It was a neo-Victorian steampunk convention, which laid the groundwork for other conventions, including SteamCon, and the Steampunk World Fair in New Jersey, which actually just finished up. Huge steampunk convention, tons of cool stuff. In 2013, well, actually, let's not. In 2011, Justin Bieber. Justin Bieber made a steampunk Christmas video in 2011, and a lot of steampunks were like, oh my god, what has he done? Steampunk is dead. In 2013, the paint manufacturer Sherwin-Williams included a steampunk palette in their collection. So if you wanted to decorate your house in the steampunk style, all you'd have to do is go on their website, look up the steampunk palette, click, and go with it. So the question is steampunk dead? I don't know. You decide. Steampunk music. What does steampunk sound like? For a long time, nobody really knew. Some bands like Dr.Steel could be described as a demented circus. People banging on metal things with other metal things.
I am crazy. What if aliens landed here a long time ago?
Steampunk music has had gypsy and tribal influences, Renaissance music influences. Any of you guys ever been to a Ren fair? You kind of know what I'm talking about.
This is a song, it's sort of autobiographical, about my experience with discovering a digital clock.
Stuff like this. Circus stuff. It's nice, right? This is a band called The Cog is Dead. Title track, Death of the Cog.
Clocks used to be such magnificent things, beautiful sprockets and dazzling springs. But you gave the people your digital beast, and in turn now all gears are deceased. How things have changed from when
lot of the different subgenres. Steampunk was not actually born from a musical renaissance, it was born from a literary renaissance. Music only began to emerge in about 2003, and the genre had no consensus on what it was supposed to sound like. And it brought up a lot of questions. Are you a steampunk musician if you dress like one? Are there certain instruments that you have to have? Is there actually a steampunk genre? What defines the steampunk music? Is Justin Bieber's Christmas video really steampunk? There's a lot of musicians out there making their own instruments. I'm sure you've seen a couple of those really cool steampunk violins, steampunk guitars. There's one up here. And the general consensus that started to emerge is that steampunk music is a combination of the old and the new. So up here we have a couple quotes from steampunk musicians. One of them is Vernian Process, who says, like steampunk literature, film, movies, music is simply any combination of old world styles with modern or futuristic flourishes. Now that could be said of a lot of different genres, but in steampunk it is pretty obvious. We have things like accordions, flutes, a lot of classical instruments with drum machines, that sort of thing. Braxton of the band called Valentine Wolf said it 3 ways. He said, for me, steampunk music has 3 traits: anachronism, musical non sequitur, that means it doesn't necessarily have to make sense, DIY ethos, and an emphasis on storytelling. Anything from chat hop, ukuleles playing metal, distorted guitars playing ragtime, cello rock, operatic vocals paired with distorted double bass. Kind of anything goes. You know about that stuff. And Abney Park just kind of, they had a more general, I've heard of this a little bit. This is Abney Park, Airship Pirates. You guys may have heard of this. You can actually dance to some of this too if you're into dancing. We've tried it in nightclubs before. We actually used to play steampunk at DJ Nocturna's nights, and every so often I'll throw in a steampunk song or two. I'm also a DJ. As far as I know, I'm the only DJ on the island who's actually played an entire steampunk set, which was kind of in the earlier days of steampunk music, and it was a little difficult to find, but I managed and it was fun. Basically, the challenge for steampunk music is not mashing styles together, but doing it well and tastefully. In the last year and a half, there's been a ton of local steampunk bands popping up, inspired by Steampunk World Fair, inspired by steampunk conventions, inspired by seeing other steampunk bands in person and on YouTube. And so now the steampunk music genre is actually becoming a genre, and it's alive and well. Okay, you're probably tired of hearing me talking. Next up is Radine with a little bit on steampunk literature.
Hopefully I won't have too much cord to hang myself with, so we'll see. Hi everyone, my name is Radine, and actually that's just my first name. When I got published, I actually just used that as, well, my name, so it's Ray, R-A-Y-D-E-A-N. Because everyone kept asking me before when they heard my name, oh, are you from the South? You know, like Billie Jean, Bobby Joe? And I'm like, no, Radine, one name. Because I had an Asian father who wanted a boy, got stuck with a girl. So I'm named Ray after him. Anyway, so thanks for letting me come and hang out with you guys today. Primarily, steampunk did start as a literary genre. It was a term that, that was coined because, so tell me about your work. And he kind of went, well, it's steampunk. It's steam, but with a different twist on it. Steam era. Now, I've been in several message boards, and you know, you like to communicate with other people, especially writers. It's a very lonely thing we do. So I was in a group, and people were asking questions about steampunk, and so someone said, "Oh, steampunk, so no electricity?" You can use steam to generate electricity. You can? So if you're interested in steampunk at all and you want to write it, number one thing, get a little versed in technology and science. It's not that hard. You know, there's lots of how-tos out there, books, everything. YouTube videos, lovely. But yeah, steam is just, you know, at that point there were steam-powered ships, steam-powered locomotives. Basically, steam was just a new way to generate more power. Okay. Now, a lot of people think about inventors and they think that, you know, those big inventors who have huge labs and lots of money. A lot of people in the Victorian era, they actually would tinker at home. They'd say, okay, I've got this thing and it doesn't work as well as I'd like it to work, so how do I make it better? How do I make it easier? And they'd tinker with it at home. A lot of the people that had invention patents were just people who did stuff at home. And a lot of them were women, but women couldn't hold patents, so would fall under their husbands. So there's plenty of interesting ideas out there to come up with story ideas. But as steampunk as a genre, yes, it is Victorian, but remember, steam power was actually before the Victorian era. So anytime that you have an era where steam is a major power generator, you can set a steampunk story. So don't be afraid to keep it stuck in the Victorian era, because you know it did go before and did go after. I have seen some people who've done some very interesting stuff with an Edwardian setting, because it is after Victorian. And in fact, I had a rather spirited discussion with a man who told me that he was a scientist, and he knew all about science. And there was no way an airship was going to exist in the Victorian era, and he ripped me a new one about it. And I said, really? Well, because the first airship went up in the air in 1900, and Victoria died in 1901. So technically, yes it did. And he said, oh yeah, well, not that kind of airship. I'm talking about like you know, one that could go into space. And I'm like, that's nice. Good for you. So, you know, the whole point is it doesn't have to have existed in the Victorian era for you to write about it. Did the idea even exist? Was it even possible? One of the first stories that I actually wrote and got out there was because I said, okay, well, let's say you have 3 guys from different areas of the Civil War. You have an artilleryman, you have a submariner, and you have a guy that was experienced in air balloons, because they actually did use hot air balloons. So you take a hot air balloon and you want to give it motion. Well, submarines had rudders. They moved. Okay. But you want to use it in war? Well, what do you need in war? You need a couple of guns. So you have the artilleryman, you have the submariner, and you have the hot air balloon man. You basically have the beginnings of an airship. But the best part about it is you don't automatically create the perfect airship. The best thing you can do with fiction is what goes wrong? How many times does it go wrong? How many people get killed doing it? Right? Because, you know, like the light bulb. Did he create it the first time? No, he took thousands and thousands of making the wrong kind of light bulb before he figured it out. So why should science be clean? You've got a scientific idea. It's not so much that you actually get there. Think of Frankenstein. How many times did Dr. Frankenstein get it wrong before he got it right? And there's a little bit of steam in that story, right? So it'll totally work. I know that Tracy wanted me to talk about where to get published. First time I ever got published in Steampunk was Shanghai Steam. And that was basically a publishing company in Canada who wanted an anthology of stories of Chinese steampunk. All right, Chinese steampunk. Great, my son was taking world history, so I picked up his textbook and I flipped to China and I said, oh, they had the opium problem. Oh, and the Chinese didn't want the British people bringing opium into their port, so they said you can't bring it into the ports. And I said, oh, well, what if they didn't bring it into a port with a ship? What if they had an airship? Because we all know when you make a law, sometimes there's a way around the law, and people find it, and then it takes a while for the law to catch up. So my whole point was, okay, so now the British are bringing it in via airships, kind of circumventing the law, and what's going to happen at that point is the people of the town say, oh, not in my town, and you have your own little revolution. So that's what I started with. After that, there was a company in Atlanta that was looking for steampunk stories centering around African characters. They even coined their own steampunk. Yeah. Now they have cyberpunk, diesel funk. Yeah, and so I mean, really what it is if you have an interest in writing, write it. Get on Google and say steampunk story submission and see what pops up. You never know what's going to pop up and when and who's going to be asking for it, because it's not always the same company. Because once they've done a steampunk anthology, they might not want to do another one for a while, maybe a different company in a different country. I've had stories published in Australia and England, and hey, you go where the calls are, you know? And so a lot of it's fun, like Capes and Clockwork. I'm going to be in their second volume. It's steampunk superheroes. Why not? Is anyone familiar with the term jerry-rig? Right? Something doesn't work, okay? So when they asked me to write a story for the second volume, I said, okay, well, steampunk, superhero, Victorian era. Oh, what if he, what if his power wasn't super like flying, but if something was wrong, he could figure out a way to fix it using jerry-rigs. So I named him Jerry-Rig. And it's kind of, he's kind of the anti-superhero because he's your normal guy who gets sucked into situations and has to fix it by figuring out how to knock over this, to hit that, to go over there and fix this problem. So just like, actually writing steampunk fiction, you gotta find ways to make it work. Put it together, see what happens. A lot of the big steampunk novels that have come out that have made kind of steampunk a word, I know Bone Shaker is huge, because that was like one of the first ones. And that was set in post-apocalyptic Seattle, zombies, all sorts of stuff. And it was kind of shocking for people, but it kind of introduced people to a whole new genre. And I know that now we have several different series. Just go to Amazon.com, throw in steampunk. There's so many different takes on it. I know there's the Ministry of Peculiar Occurrences. It's about kind of a secret agents for Victorian England. And they're all over the world, because where was England during Victorian era? Everywhere. And that's also kind of the fun. Why set a story in England? Why set a story in America? Put one in India, Spain, New Mexico. We actually had, I think last year and this year, we had Steampunk Hands Around the World that was set in February. And basically it's a month-long slew of blog posts and videos and whatnot. And so we pick people from all around the world to talk about steampunk there. And we actually got a bunch of us to put together stories. So we're talking to a publisher about it right now. But basically it's stories set in Mexico and Spain and Argentina and Hawaii, because technically back then we weren't part of the United States, which people kind of forget sometimes. So there's stories from all over the world, and it just kind of shows that you can set a steampunk story anywhere. Any questions real quick? No? We're good?
Before the age of homogenization and micro-machinery, before the tyrannous efficiency of internal combustion and the domestication of electricity, lived beautiful, monstrous machines that lived and breathed and exploded unexpectedly at inconvenient moments. It was a time where art and craft were united, where unique wonders were invented and forgotten, and punks roamed the streets. living in squads and fighting against despotic governance through wit, will, and wild. So the next era, the next section here that I'm going to talk about is actually on steampunk media and also popular media, popular genre. Basically, if you are new, when I first started out, I just go to Google, my best friend, and just type in steampunk, right? Steampunk media and see what comes up. That quote specifically came from Steampunk magazine. It was British-based, founded in 2007. And they are a steampunk lifestyle magazine. They cover a lot of different topics, interviews, music, fashion, politics. But you would see that a lot of things that they cover has a political stance on it. They have like a so what do you think the politics would be in a steampunk? Like what stand do you think a steampunk publication would take? Any guesses? Do you think we'll be like law-abiding citizens? Yeah. So generally anti-government, you know, a lot of, you know, right. So very like anti-governance kind of a thing. So that comes up a lot in these magazines, especially the first one, the Steampunk magazine. And then we also have, talking about lifestyle magazine, what is steampunk without fashion, right? Especially for the ladies. I mean, we're all decked out. And I'm like, oh, I just got a new bling bling, right? So I gotta attach it right now. So for the ladies, a lot of time, and also for the gents, I think the gentlemen, steampunk fashion is a huge part of it. Anybody know ladies of steampunk? No? Google it. But maybe like not at a work computer or something. Ladies of Steampunk changed the name. Now it's Hourglass magazine. They also have another publication called Bronze Age. Anyone knows Bronze Age? You don't have to raise your hand. Just they cover culture, fashion, music, art, and all that. But specifically, a lot of their magazine covers you would see have beautiful ladies decked out in steampunk outfit. Some in more erotic fashion than others, but the focus was on the beauty of steampunk and the fashion of it. There was a link here, but I don't think we have internet. So the top 10 steampunk media, again, you guys have smartphones, so you can Google it. It just talks about, you know, top 10 most voted kind of a media, including movies, cartoons, animation, like the latest one, Hullabaloo. You know, got a lot of attention on when they were trying to get funded. They have crowdsourcing. I think they were funded way beyond the 100% of it. So now they have new animation coming up too.
Hello, my name is James Lopez, creator of Hullabaloo. What I'm looking to do is combine two of my favorite things, 2D animation and steampunk, in a project that I call Hullabaloo.
So I have a friend who couldn't make it today. His name is Sean McAfee. He and his fiancée, Allison, actually founded Clockwork magazine back in 2014, so not that long ago. They cover same thing. A lot of it is news regarding steampunk, interviews and all of that. And actually, they did a feature on Steampunk Hawaii. So this was a group shot that was taken at published in the magazine. It was in Kawaii Kon last year, actually, right outside, before the panel, the steampunk panel. And also in his magazine, so I asked him what makes him started the magazine, you know, especially because it's printed too, not just online. Online there's all kinds of things you can find. So he said he wanted to be able to archive some of these beautiful things in print. So again, the fashion, the articles, the stories, he wants to be able to archive them in print that way. Do I see that? So one last thing on that, I asked him about, you know, his love for steampunk, and this is a little bit more on the fashion side of it. So he said, you know, when he choose, like when a lot of us here like cosplay, that's why we're here, right? So when you're cosplaying, if you want to cosplay a steampunk character, where do you start? So one of the things that he said was pick a persona that calls out to you. So if, for example, you feel like you're more rebellious, you are kind of like a pirate, you know, then you want to pick that kind of persona and dress according to that. So we have, you know, going back to airships and all that. That may call to you, so you can own that. And then you start thinking of, well, if I'm an airship pirate, what kind of equipment would I have? What kind of things would I have with me? And integrate that into part of your costume. But if you are, you know, like aristocrat and you like really beautiful things and all that, then you would have different things on you. Okay, so.
I'm actually going to Hey everybody. I'm actually going to be going over a little bit of steampunk fashion. So all of my own costumes. And the beauty of steampunk, one of the reasons I love steampunk so much, is it's a lot of refurbishing, a lot of reusing things, recycling. So steampunk is good for the environment. You can incorporate steampunk fashion into your everyday fashion. It's really easy. Goodwill is your best friend. Thrift stores, you can find things really easy, super cheap, which is another great thing about steampunk. Right here, I have some leggings that you can wear with your boots. These are the sleeves of a sweater that I cut off. It's that easy. You know, you can sew on some buttons, some fun doodads, knickknacks, cogs, chains. If you're lucky, you can find spats. Spats are a big thing in steampunk. You know, they fall back to the Victorian era. Right here, depending on the kind of style you want, lace is a big popular thing in steampunk. You know, leather and lace, and you can wear a dress like this. Throw on a buckly belt, and there you go. You know, buckles are a big thing in steampunk. Find some cool shoes, throw it all together. It's really, really easy. And especially if you have a sewing machine. The dress I'm wearing now, that you can see in the picture, this dress was actually my old prom dress. And everything that I've added to it, all of this, all the white ruffles on the edges, came from a wedding gown that I actually found at Goodwill. Tore it apart, cut it, sewed it back together, and you know, it's amazing what, you know, one thing may seem odd to use, like who would think of using a wedding dress, but it's incredible the kind of things that you can take off and reattach. Ribbons, chocolate boxes, hold on to them, save them. You know, steampunk is all about reusing things. And let's see what else we got here. A necklace, found at Goodwill also. So there's a lot of great ways to incorporate steampunk into not just your steampunk outfit, but again, everyday fashion. Like she was saying, it all depends on what kind of steampunk fashion you want to have. You know, a little more aristocratic style, they like silks, bright fabrics. So we got there, and you get a little more of the rustic style. And you get a little more rough fabrics, you know, duck cloth, leather. Leather's a big one. You know, corsets are important if you want that nice, you know, Victorian figure. What's the other ones? We got, you know, we got more lace. We got, you know, so we're looking for like khakis. Khakis are a great way to go, especially if you're a guy, or if you want to go with like an adventure outfit. You know, khakis with pockets, lots and lots of pockets. You can hang things out of, attach things to, chains. The little doodads that you find off adventuring. And it's all about, you know, back to the, you know, the beauty of steampunk is it's not something that I would go out and recommend just going out and throwing together. You know, the beauty of it is you get to take the time searching and digging and having your own little adventure, finding these little bits and pieces. And you're always adding on new things, taking off, replacing, building, tinkering, and that's the fun of it, at least in my opinion. You know, getting to make all of these things myself, handmade. And even if you're not so great at it, there are lots of local artists, people online. You have Etsy that you can find ideas from. And anything else you'd like me to cover? All right, and on to the tinkering.
Hey guys, so my name is Abby and this is Richard. We're with Rick Steampunk, etc. And we are the kind of the DIYers, the people who build the stuff out of the not stuff. So we just wanted to kind of tell you guys a little bit about how you can get started in that. So we were actually thrust into steampunk accidentally. We didn't even know it existed at all. And one of Richard's sisters was like, hey, I need a pair of steampunk goggles. And we're like, what are those? And then of course, you know, one little search in Google and this whole world opened up to us. We both have artistic and creative backgrounds. I'm an engineer and Richard works in steel framing and is an artist. So we were able to take these skills that we already have and build it into this whole new exciting genre, adventure, hobby. So there's three things that we always kind of sum up how we do our creating with. And there's scavenging, modding, and tinkering. So those are kind of the three focus points we're gonna kind of bring up with this. All right, so scavenging, this is actually a big part of where our look comes from. So there's different, as Radine was telling us, there's different genres within the steampunk genre. The one that Richard and I personally are drawn to is the post-apocalyptic. So this is when the world has collapsed. There's not a whole lot of diesel left, there's not a whole lot of oil left. So how are you gonna power? You're gonna power with steam. So it's kind of a rebuilding of society and it has this great futuristic feel to it, but it's also got that down gritty feel to it as well. And this is where we get the first step in that, scavenging. So a lot of times you will be out and about, you'll see things like in your house you've got those mason jars that somebody gave you lemonade in once. Those, the original, like almost everybody's starter pair of goggles is two of these and a strap of leather. And boom, you've already got something ready to go. So it's just starting to learn to look at things in new ways. We haven't found one yet on the island, so if you guys know of one, let us know. But there are often brass and copper metal recycling places. And a lot of them, if you go in with a bucket, they'll charge you by the pound. So you can just go sort through these massive dump areas and just find all sorts of great knickknacks. She was pointing out earlier, this is a necklace that Richard made us. And what it is, it's a piece of drill bit on these big columns that would bore out the metal when they were. And so they had recycled a bunch of them, and they're just tons and tons of these little things, and they're fantastic. We use them on necklaces, we use them as holes on the weaponry, and so it's just finding these little bits that people were done with and learning how to give it a new life and bring it into your life.
So, like she said, I got into it because my little sister just wanted a pair of goggles, so it really, you're only limited by your imagination. And Abby's actually wearing one of the pairs of goggles that I made, and it's really the lenses.
Very sturdy.
They are. But I just thought it would be so cool if you could change the lenses out. And so every pair of goggles I've ever made, I've used this design, and you can have any color you want, you can change them for your different costumes, and it's just figuring out what you need to get what you want. And a lot of it, you can start with something like a green shirt, and you can add leather, you add tassels, whatever you want, and it's really just customizing it to how you want it to look. The thing I love about steampunk is there are so many different ways you can go. You can go with the beautiful gowns, you can go with the just rough costumes, basically. And I think it's just really fun that you can tailor it to anything you want. If you wanted to be a butcher, a baker, a candlestick maker, you could do it with steampunk. So it's just really fun. And one of the things you see a lot is firearms. It goes well with the costumes. And most of the ones I have are just Nerf guns that have been taken apart, spray painted. We use, and we'll go over that later, we antique them with shoe polish mainly. But Nerf has come out with a new line that's called the Zombie Strike line. And honestly, I think they made them for steampunkers. Because you open them up, you take them apart, and they just come apart real easy. You put them back together real easy. They're not as difficult as some of the past ones. And so you start with this, and you end up something that looks like that. You add a little leather on the handle. They even have the wood grain on this particular model, which I think is kind of fun.
So Richard led us right into Punk It Up, and that's where when you're not quite ready to come up with brand new ideas by yourself, when you start looking around and you see things, you're like, this is close. I just need to push this a little further and it's gonna be perfect. And like he was talking about with the Nerf line, they've come out with an entire Zombie Strike line, and it is so much easier to take apart than before, and so much easier to work with. And one of our favorite tools when we are modifying, especially the Nerf, and is we use spray paint, painter's tape, and then rivets. So there's this 3 very basic things. You can get them at any Lowe's. Your mom probably has some in her house already. And yeah, so it's just a really fun process. One of the things that we like to do that kind of helps it fit in more, and you can kind of see this as you evolve as a tinkerer. We have your initial stuff, and it's cool, and it looks nice, but it's got that very cropped feel to it. It doesn't look authentic. It doesn't blend with your clothes. And one of the things that we found that brought it right to the next level for us was antiquing. And that's where you take something where it's nice and new and it's shiny, but it doesn't really look like it's survived a war or two. And so one of our favorite materials to use with that is tea and shoe polish. So I'm gonna have Richard hold this for a minute. Okay, so this was originally just white paper that was printed out on a printer, but all you have to do is, tea's really easy to get a hold of here, soak some in a glass, get it down until it's really nice and deep, and then just grab your tea bag. You don't even need a paintbrush or anything. Just start smearing it on that paper. And it'll dry very quickly, and it gives this beautiful yellowed antique look to it almost instantly. And then along the literature line too, there's several steampunk artists who have their work out for free. They're like, yeah, take my print it, do what you want with it. And one of our favorite artists did one as the Steampunk's Guide to the Apocalypse. And so we made these really neat books. And these are all tea and coffee stains. So you just kind of go back and you're like, okay, if this book had been around 200 years, what would have it had to go through? Did it fall in a mud puddle? And it's kind of fun because then you get to go take that book on that adventure. You're like, all right, let's grind it over here a little bit. Let's accidentally spill something there. So it's a really nice way to bring that authenticity to your projects.
So one of the things that I am really into is the tinkering, because I just have a lot of stuff that other people would consider junk, but I see potential in it. And perhaps I have a little too much of that stuff, but never, right? So one of the things, for instance, I got these great light bulbs. We replaced all of our light bulbs at my work with fluorescents. So I saw that and I thought, I can't let that go to waste. So I made a lamp out of it, and all I did was I cannibalized a flashlight, and I got some wire. I put the flashlight, or the LED from the flashlight into the light, and that's how I made my first one. I thought it would be real great, and it would be so easy to hammer copper into, it's not easy. Having done that one, I realized a few things, and I said, you know, I want to try that again. So I decided to do some soldering and learn how to do little electrical circuits myself, and I decided not to go with the flashlight. It didn't work out as well as I'd like to, and I just made my own. For the back of it, I decided I wanted to go with a few more pieces of copper, make it a little easier on myself. So what I would encourage is don't just stop with the first one you make. Just learn from it and see how can I make it better, and then do it.
So one of the great things about man mechanics, and you've heard this throughout the entire presentation from everybody, is Google is your friend. So every artist out there, especially in the steampunk genre, is very, very excited about their work. And it's a very free environment. It's a very sharing environment. There's almost never do you see a product and somebody not telling you how to make it below it. Like there's a lot of just free volunteered information. And it's great because they have all of these blogs, all of these, if you go to like DeviantArt, has just a massive, massive selection of great steampunk ideas, great steampunk creators, everywhere from full-on armored suits that just blow your mind to somebody who took swimming goggles and were like, ta-da, steampunk. So, like, I mean, you've got, it's this wonderful, wonderful community, and it's just very open. And one of the great things too is if you aren't one of the people who feels like tinkering is for you, if you're more of a cosplayer, or you're one of the people who enjoys it and likes to see it, but the idea of getting out some copper and hammering on it is either going to drive your dog insane or drive your wife insane, then you can just go, there's some great sites for buying it. So there are a lot of steampunkers to help support their own, creativity and stuff. Etsy.com is a great website. We're on there. There's a ton of other artists, and once again, a really free and open environment. So a lot of them are really big into customization, and that's a huge part of the steampunk element is customization. So if you see something on one of those sites, you're like, man, I wish it was yellow. Just message them. We've had all sorts of really great experiences with people giving us ideas and going back with them. So about a few years ago, Richard invented what is, you see a lot of the top hat fascinators in the genre a lot, but one of the loves, because of like 2000 Leagues Under the Sea and stuff, there's this very large nautical theme, and octopus are fascinating, And so what we did is he took this and he made it into an octopus fascinator. And we were really excited because they just flew off the shelves. We could not keep these stocked. And one day we got our favorite one ever. We had a woman who does fashion shows back east. And she messaged us and she's like, I want one of those, but I want it with my fabric. And we're like, sure. So we, one of our favorite transactions was she mailed us a pack of all of these papers and all of her ideas, a big storyboard basically. We got to create that for her. And so now we have this connection with somebody we never would have met before. So it's a great environment, a great culture. And we encourage you guys to get into it as much as you can. And pass this back to Tracy. I can talk about tools, never mind. Okay, so that's one of the things Richard was talking to you guys about, trial and error. And this is definitely where trial and error comes in handy. I'm gonna actually let Richard talk about the tools as he is mostly our tool man. So I'm gonna pass that right over to you.
So I use every tool I have at my disposal. I've spent so much on tools that my wife is about ready to kill me. But the best I would have to say is a Dremel. If you want to really get into it, it just really cuts down on make time and everything, but just wire cutters, pliers, everything, all your basics. A hot glue gun is real handy. And because you work with leather a fair amount, leather punches and grommet setters, those kind of things are always very handy to have too.
Along the lines with the rivets and that, you listened when she was talking about having a sewing machine and how handy that can be. For a lot of us, there's just not enough room in your house for a sewing machine, or there's not enough, needlework you're willing to have fingers bloody for the next week, So one of the big things for us was investing in that little rivet set, because you don't have to sew anymore. You poke a hole and you punch it and you got it. But we were actually just talking to some of the audience about, it's called Hawaii Makers. There we go. She said it's basically a 24-hour fitness for making things. So you've got like sewing machines and tooling. So we're gonna go visit them after this. But I-17 and Artist Alley. I-17 and Artist Alley. So if you are looking at getting into this and you are living in a micro apartment like most of us are, this could be a really great outlet for you.
Well, it looks like we're out of time, folks. Thank you. We are Steampunk Hawaii. If you'd like to come up, take a look at some of this cool stuff, feel free. If you'd like to come up and have any questions, feel free. Brianna is over by the door with Steampunk Hawaii cards if you want to grab one before you leave. And thank you so much for being here. Happy Steampunking.
My blood starts pumping as I drink my cup. A bigger way to spin and I turn the school around. We're way above ground, but we're cruising on a target.